Welcome to Get Paid for Your Pad, the definitive show on Airbnb hosting, featuring the best advice on how to maximize profits from your Airbnb listing, as well as real-life experiences from Airbnb hosts all over the world. Welcome. We are your hosts, Josefa Kapadia and Jasper Rivers.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.
Remember Bruce Bennett, the super host in San Francisco that I interviewed? Bruce was selected from thousands of hosts to be featured as a Hostfully host and won a free guidebook consultation. Make your own guidebook at hostfully.com/pad.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. And today I am joined by Diego and Asher, and they are the co-founders of a new app that people can use to book last-minute stays with hosts, and it's called Overnight. So Diego and Asher, welcome to the show.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm in Denver, Colorado at the moment. It's very, very cold. But fortunately, I'm flying to Florida tomorrow, so I'll be in warmer areas.
Nice.
What about
That's
you
awesome.
guys? Where are you guys right now?
Oh, we're in sunny California. We're in Los Angeles right now at our HQ, which is the Overnight House, which if any of your listeners happen to be in LA, they should definitely come look it up, check us out. We host people. We work out of here. It's an amazing vibe, and it's right off the Sunset Strip in the middle of Hollywood.
That's right. I've been there a few months ago.
Oh,
I had the pleasure of having a cup of coffee with Diego near the Overnight HQ.
Nice. That's awesome. I hate I was out of town for that.
Yeah, but you guys have a nice little spot there.
Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, we work hard for it. You know, we're basically working around the clock here. So co-founders and I live here. And you know, we're regularly up fairly late here working. So it makes sense because it's, you know, we're building out of here, living out of here, hosting out of here, that it's a fairly central area because we just get a ton of value out of it. We're using it really all the time. And, you know, that's kind of what we're passionate about, is being able to extend the use of spaces, as much as they could be used. Right.
Absolutely. And I heard, running a startup is a lot of work. Is it?
Yeah, it is. You know, it's around the clock, and especially something like this, like Overnight is very much a human company. Like, we are working with humans around the clock in different time zones, like all over the world. So when you think about that, you know, time's irrelevant if things are happening across the world. So time zones kind of, you know, shift and so forth. And, you know, we have late nights where we're up building a product and, you know, trying to move as quickly as possible, you know.
Yeah, I can tell, like, you guys always seems to be busy. We hung out at the Airbnb Open in Los Angeles as well, which was very cool. Let's talk about Overnight. So here's the way that I would describe it. People probably know an app called Hotel Tonight, which you can use to book last-minute hotel bookings. So my interpretation of Overnight is that it is the Hotel Tonight for the short-term rental market. Is that a good description?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair description. Ultimately, like, I think when people think of like spontaneous travel, people are less likely to think about Airbnb and think more about hotels. So we wanted to come in and build a product that solves problems on both the host side and the guest side, for making last minute rentals and spontaneous rentals a lot easier to manage. So it's less about discounting your listing for last minute and more about just making it very easy and making a home for last minute stays for short-term listings and other people's homes as well. So yeah, in effect, it is like Hotel Tonight in the respect that it is like made for, you know, spontaneous stays. But it's also like Airbnb in the extent that you're staying in someone else's home and not a hotel. So we do get that comparison quite a bit, but there's a lot of little things in there that make us special and different as well.
Right. And, how would Airbnb hosts, how would they use the app?
Well, we have something pretty special for Airbnb hosts. So if a host from Airbnb signs up, they already have their photos and description and stuff like that. So it's pretty easy to bring all that stuff on. But something really cool that we do is if they sync their calendars, then we hide their listing if they're booked up that day on Airbnb. And if they have availability like that day, we're going to promote their listing up in the feed, which means if somebody's looking for a place to stay like that night, some of the first listings that they're going to see might be an Airbnb host that happens to have availability that night. So it's kind of like this automagical, I think that word's made up, way of Airbnb hosts like benefiting on our platform by syncing their calendars.
So from the user's perspective, from the guest's perspective, or the traveler, if let's say I'm going to go to Los Angeles and I'm supposed to stay with some friends, but then my friend calls me at 1 p.m. just when I arrive at the airport, he calls me and says, "Hey, you know what? My girlfriend's coming. You can't stay here." So now I need to find a place to stay tonight. So I open up the Overnight app, and Overnight will show me a number of listings, and these don't necessarily need to be Airbnb, right? Like anyone can sign up for Overnight, correct?
Exactly. It's our own marketplace. So these, like, if people are creating like listings on here and they're Airbnb hosts, they're basically recreating their listing on our platform. And then, in turn, we have other hosts on there that are not hosts on Airbnb as well. So what they'll see is, they drop a pin, and usually they'll see around 10 listings per listing type. So they'll see 10 private listings, they'll see 10 entire places, and they'll see 10 shared places in that like 5-6 mile radius, right? So they see that without any taps, and those places are available like for tonight. So if you see a place, many hosts like will boost their listing up to the top. So if they open up their app that day, they could just tap boost, and it basically puts their listing at the top of everybody else's. So if they see somebody that has a boosted listing, they could tap on it. They hit request, that host accepts it. That whole process is within a 10-minute window. So the idea is we're surfacing people that are ready to get booked, basically at any time that day to the top. So the idea is you see listings around you and you're able to book them very quickly.
So how do you get the hosts to respond that quickly to the inquiries?
It's a good question. So 100% of our hosts are on mobile. So 100% of our hosts are using our mobile app. Which means it's always in their pocket. And we've made a lot of design choices around surfacing the right information at the right time to make it basically the response time at the speed of responding to a text, right? So they open it up, they're right in chat, they could see that person's profile, they could see if they verified their ID, their credit card, their Facebook, their phone number, if they have mutual friends, all like within a second of basically opening up the app. And if they have any questions, they're already in chat. They could chat with them, or they could just accept it right there.
I see. And so let's say that I found the place that I want to stay. I've exchanged some messages. Like, what's the rest of the process? What does it look like?
Yeah, so there are two ways of going about it. People can message first, or people can request. And if people request, oftentimes we'll see like a request go through, and then maybe they'll, say a little something about like, when is it available, or when can I arrive? And then that host will accept, and then they basically talk about just like key exchange, and it's all fairly self-regulating and self-serving after that. So basically they show up at the host house and they stay. And then they rate as soon as they check out. So there is checkout on our system, and like the effort for that is just basically to make sure that we're getting as many reviews as quickly as possible for people. So yeah, I mean, you could also inquire with the place by messaging with them, and they're able to actually pre-approve you as well. And it's not just for tonight as well. So like if you have a place that you want to stay at, like, next Friday, you can inquire with the hosts and see if their place is available. And they can actually pre-approve you in advance as well. But right now, currently, advanced booking only works with pre-approval. So it's good to message hosts if you want to stay somewhere in advance, because we're putting a lot of eggs in the basket of design around like making last minute very easy for hosts.
And can you only book one night, or can you book longer stays as well?
So currently, like if you're requesting a place, you could request up to 5 nights, but you could get pre-approved basically for a week, 2 weeks, a month, and that's rolled out. So as long as you need, like if you wanted to, say, hey, I want to show up next Friday for 2 weeks, that host could pre-approve you if they have that availability.
Okay, very cool.
I have tried a couple digital guidebooks these past months, and I've decided to use Hostfully. I've used Hostfully to create an online and printable guidebook to show my guests my favorite places in town. My guest feedback has been great. They've used my recommendations and I'm getting fewer questions from my guests as a result. I've included screenshots of my guidebook in the photo section of my Airbnb listing as a way to differentiate my listing from others. Make your own guidebook at hostfully.com/pad.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the sign-up process for hosts. So now I'm going to, instead of being a traveler, now I'm going to pretend that I'm a host. Well, I am a host. So let's say I want to use overnight. And the reason why I would use overnight as an Airbnb host is because I want to fill up last-minute spaces in my calendar, last-minute gaps, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Like as a host, Airbnb's algorithm, I think people look at it as like a black box sometimes. They don't know why they get deprioritized, or maybe they just still, even at their best, are having, 80% or so occupancy. So I'd say for this, our sorting is pretty straightforward right now. And we do have benefits for hosts. So if you sync your calendar and you're an Airbnb host, we're automatically going to, prioritize you somewhat in the list. But you still have the option of coming in and, setting your own calendar if you don't want to sync it, and you could boost your listing up to the top. So that's a really interesting thing that we have for hosts. Again, is this boost thing where if you open up the app today, you could tap on today in the calendar and automatically just boost it, and you'll jump to the top of everybody else's listings. So that's a pretty interesting benefit that we have with us, because you're not going to be deprioritized in that case. If you're opening up the app and you show that kind of intent to want to host somebody that day, you'll be rewarded with more demand in that case. So I'd say, opening up the app, you sign in with Facebook, you download the iPhone app, you add your listing. It just takes a few minutes. It's all very obviously mobile friendly because we're designing for mobile first. And then you hit save. And from there, you might get an activation call from one of our guys on the team who's a host success manager. And our team is very hands-on. That's one big benefit of what we have is we have support around the clock and real people to talk to at any given time. Should you run into an issue or just have questions about how to make your listing better, we're accessible. We're human beings on the other side of the phone that, will call, text, email, message with you basically around the clock.
Right. And then how does the payment system work? Is it the same as on Airbnb where the guest pays Airbnb and at the time of the reservation, and then the host gets the money a day after the check-in?
Yeah. So with first stay, after they attach their bank account, it usually takes about 5 to 7 days, depending on the bank, for the very first stay, just because the bank has to get verified. And I think it's basically the same with a lot of these other guys as well. And then after that, it's usually you'll get paid about a day after that guest checks in. So for that stay.
Right. Got it. Are you guys available in all over the US or?
That's a good question. I think ultimately we've officially launched 4 cities, which is LA, San Francisco, Austin, and New York. But outside of those 4 cities, we've actually had hosts on board and put their listings up in about 110 countries.
Wow.
So my thoughts on that are basically, we'd encourage you to if you want to be a part of this, which is something that's growing, and then we're getting off the ground, but it's people are excited about it, all over the world. I'd encourage you to still put up your listing and just know that you might not get as much demand in some city that's an off city, but you might, and know that that person on the other side is probably going to be an early adopter like you, and you're probably going to have a lot in common. So it's cool to have this smaller community kind of globally. So I definitely encourage people to, put their listings up, but know that if they're in, a city that's not as like densely populated or not something that we've officially launched, you might not get as much demand, but the demand that you might get from it, it's going to be some really great people coming through.
And there's no downside to signing up, I guess, right? Because it's free to use for hosts.
Yeah, there's no downside at all for signing up. It's definitely free to use for hosts. So I think it's extra inbound opportunities for them.
Right. And let's say I sign up and I upload my listing, and then the app will connect with my Airbnb listing, and it will only show my listing in the app when I have availability, correct?
Yeah, so all that is basically the one thing that you would have to do is, so you create your listing. You have to create your listing on our app, which means like you have to upload the pictures and then just basically copy paste your description. And then from there, there's an email that you'll get that basically says, reply to this email with your calendar link. And it gives you instructions on how to get the link for your calendar from Airbnb. And people do this very regularly. We've made it a pretty easy process to do. And then as soon as they send us that, then everything is all synced up and ready. And you'll get kind of notified whenever all that's ready to go. And then, it's all additional for you. If you're not booked on Airbnb, you'll be promoted on our app.
Right. And then if somebody books my place on overnight, then I have to go into the Airbnb calendar and block it, right? Overnight can't do that for me, can they?
Yes, that's right, and that's a good point. For right now, it's not working two ways just yet, but in the future it will. So you will have to go in and block out those days that if you get a booking on overnight. Right. So I definitely suggest kind of like, keeping that in mind, that like, though that's the way that it is now, it won't necessarily be that way in the future. But for now, you'll kind of have to pay attention and keep your eye on both to just mute out those days when you get a booking.
Right, but I guess most people on Airbnb, I think they don't accept same day bookings. I think most hosts set it to like 1 or 2, maybe even 3 days. So I think in a lot of cases it won't actually be a problem, because let's say I don't accept same day bookings on Airbnb. So if I were to put my listing on overnight, then if as long as people book on the same day, I won't have a problem. And if people want to book in advance, then I'm going to have to pre-approve them first anyway, right? They can't insta book, right? Or they can never insta book.
No, not yet. We don't have any instant book features, because basically I think with a lot of the bet that we're looking at is, we can empower more people to become hosts by allowing them to make the decision a lot faster, whether or not they want to host somebody, by creating like a lighter weight experience. So like effectively it is kind of an instant book, but it's an instant book where you get to choose who stays there. Like you're still able to have like an understanding and choice of who's going to stay there, but we make that all as easy as possible.
Right. Got it. Very cool. What else should people know about overnight? So there's 2 ways that people who are listening, there's 2 ways that they can use it, right? First of all, if you're a host, you can use overnight to fill up last minute gaps in your calendar. And secondly, if you travel, you can also use overnight to stay with hosts, just like you would stay on Airbnb. Yep,
that's exactly right. And I think we have a pretty good code for you, by the way, the Get Paid for Your Pad code, which is GPFYP, which if they use this code, whether they're traveling or they're hosting, like if they're hosting and they use your code, they're automatically going to be turned into an ambassador, which means typically it's like you invite a friend, you get $25, you give them $25. Or if you have an Airbnb guest, and you're able to invite them. But with this, now if they use your code, which is GPFYP, they'll actually get $35 cash. So if somebody has a guest who's there or is leaving and they want to have them book in the future or that day on overnight, then they could actually gift that guest $25 and they'll get $35 cash in return. And, there's no better way to get great reviews than to, give your guests a $25 credit for something. So I definitely recommend that they do that. And if they're traveling and they use your code, they're also going to get $25 off their next stay if they travel.
Right. Very cool. So, for example, I got some guests over in Amsterdam at my listing. And if I tell them, hey, next time you travel, there's this app called Overnight. And if you use it, then I will get $35 in cash. So most normal people who sign up without the code, they'll get $25 travel credit. But if you use the code, you get $35 in cash.
Yeah, that's right. So whether they plan on traveling in the future or if they want to extend their stay, or if, for whatever reason they prefer to use Overnight, it's a great way as a host, for you to get paid and also give, a gift to start out that stay with that host or with that guest.
Yeah.
I once met a Lyft driver who drove for Uber but referred for Lyft, and she said she doubled her money in her car. She's like, I doubled my money I pick up Uber riders, and then I ask him, hey, have you heard of Lyft? And half the time they hadn't, half the time they didn't. And she would give her Lyft referral code. She says, like, Uber was giving me all the traffic, but since when I refer somebody to Lyft, I'm referring someone that's not just a friend, but somebody who already likes, on-demand cars, right? When you have an Airbnb guest or any guest, you are referring somebody that already likes, short-term rentals. But you're not going to get any kind of referrals from Airbnb or any other site. But from us, you can.
Right. So, okay. Yeah, I get it. It's it's interesting because I know there's a lot of hosts who give their Uber referral code to guests. Like when a guest books, they'll say, "Hey, you know what? If you don't have Uber, here's my referral code. You get $25 or something, and then you can take the Uber from the airport."
Yep.
So it's kind of like a similar thing where there's no downside to giving somebody a code. Because, if that person doesn't use it, then nothing happens. But if that person does use it in the future, then suddenly you get $35. And like you said, people who are your guests in your Airbnb, they're already interested in staying with hosts. So there's a reasonable chance that they will actually use Overnight in the future.
Yeah, exactly. And again, if they feel like extending their stay, which happens, often, then it's a great way for them to save if they're extending. And also as a host, you're able to make money as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Awesome. Yeah. Well, I'm excited to give it a try. Next time I need a place to stay, I'll definitely look at Overnight. And so I'm in Amsterdam. You said you've only launched in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Austin, New York, but there could still be demand, right? So it's still a reason for me to sign up.
Yeah, there's definitely still a reason for you to sign up as a host. I think there's no downside to it, right? There's no downside to referring. There's no downside to listing your place. It's all extra money. So I think, my main thing is just wanting to be as upfront with our community as possible and your community as well. And saying even though there might not be as much demand, you're kind of unlocking a new community. And also there's no downside because it's potential extra money for you. And for us, again, we've already had hosts on board in 110 countries. We want to have a global footprint because we want to make travel easier all around the world. Because if we could, make, a booking as easy as 10 minutes, to book a place half the price of a hotel, then I think ultimately, we could change the way people travel. We could take somebody who maybe takes, 1 or 2 trips a year to make, 3 to 4 trips a year. So, but it needs the help of awesome hosts all over the world. So,
right. Got it.
Oh, so we're worth noting that those are the 4 cities, but we have seen this phenomenon where there's 10 to 20 cities that we don't really promote. I'll give you an example. New Orleans, and that the New Orleans hosts there, because not that many, and we don't promote it. They get messages a lot. They get a lot of messages because they're the only ones there. There's a handful of New Orleans hosts. Same thing with hosts in Chicago. They get a lot of the Detroit because nobody's expecting it. So they kind of own that territory in a way.
Yeah.
So they get a lot of messages, more than you would ever expect, considering we don't promote them.
Yeah.
Right, because there just happens to be a lot of users who are already using the Overnight app to stay in different places. But there's not a lot of hosts yet in that area. So you're kind of like one of the first adopters and there's not a lot of competition yet. So it could even be useful for Airbnb hosts who are struggling to fill up their calendar to just use Overnight because they might be one of the first ones in that particular area.
Yeah, that's right. and they could be kind of at the top of that list.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get it. That's really cool.
So yeah, and we found that like once people use overnight, like we have like, I don't know, something like 30% of users will use overnight again within like that month, which is crazy. So like the retention is quite good. And basically people like this experience of just like having this seamless like way of booking that takes just a few minutes. So I guess it's like one of these things where it's like you might as well just kind of list your place on there, just knowing that like if somebody travels with it in the States and they go to Amsterdam and they open overnight, like you have a chance of A, meeting somebody who's like a part of this early community, which is awesome, but B, being at the top of that list in Amsterdam.
Right. Very cool.
Which is my favorite city, and I plan on booking on overnight next time I come to Amsterdam. So, you should definitely list your place.
Okay, now I'm definitely going to. I've actually already downloaded the app, and it's very simple to get involved overnight. So if you want to create a listing as a host, you simply just download the app. You can find it in the App Store for iPhone and also for Android.
Not quite Android, but
it's only iPhone.
Yeah, coming soon for Android.
Okay, cool. So if you have an iPhone, then you can create a listing. Simply download the app, as I've done, and yeah, the whole process is very simple. There's not a lot of downside. And then the second thing that you can do is just let people know, let your guests know that overnight exists, and you might make some money.
Yep. Definitely.
Very cool.
And I'd say there's one other feature that I think we found a lot of hosts kind of like, which is hosts. We've seen an increasing demand for people wanting to control their privacy. So we do have like a way of hosting privately if somebody wanted to do that as well. So I just figured I'd tack that on to the very end. You could list your place, you could turn on private mode, and basically you blur yourself out from your listing, and you're able to list just having the listing up there without your face and name being on there as well.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm excited to use it. And so for the people who want to check it out, use the code GetPaidForYourPad, GPFYP, and then you'll get your $35 in cash when you refer somebody. And well, guys, thanks a lot for joining the show.
Absolutely.
And I wish you all the best. We've hung out a couple times. You're definitely a very cool team. So I expect nothing but great things from you guys.
Of course. Stay cool in Denver.
I will. Fortunately, I'm leaving tomorrow. But anyway, thanks, guys. And for all the listeners, thank you for tuning in. And of course, next week there'll be another episode. So we'll see you then.
Get paid for your pad. 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 Get paid for your pad.